the Deputy Director at the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency. I've been with the agency a little over 10 years, matter of fact 12 years now. And I ask you a rhetorical question. How prepared are you as mayor, alderman, whatever, for a disaster? How prepared are you? Because despite the rumors, I've never been able to stop a storm from happening. My wife says I've got superpowers. I guess I've got her fooled. Because how prepared are you for that? So I want to spend probably a little bit of time describing how you get those federal declarations, because you play a pivotal role in making that happen. But I also want to tell you, I'm telling you today, I've got some bad news for you, and I'm going to go ahead and get that out of the way first. The bad news is you're going to get a disaster. I can't stop it. You're going to get a disaster. So I've got kind of a graphic picture up there as well, and we kind of depict it since 2014. There are 5 counties out there with municipalities that have only received one federal declaration. The next color there that have had 2 disasters, there's 23. There's 3, the next level up for 3 disasters, there's 17 counties. The next level up is 19 counties. The next level up in the 5+ club, there are 18 counties out there. There are no counties that are not colored in that map. You're going to get a disaster. Is there anybody from Covington County out there? Anybody from Covington County? They don't want to claim the prize of 8 federally declared disasters. 8. I didn't count COVID. I didn't count some of these emergency measures declarations that we get when we think a storm is going to happen from the coast. Did not count that. You are going to get a disaster. So I go back to my preface slide. How prepared are you for it? Can't stop it. It's just going to happen, but you got to be prepared for it. All right. So here's what I kind of cover a little bit. I'm going to talk about some myths of a disaster, a federal declaration. Talk about the method of how we go about obtaining one of those. I'm going to talk about the major programs that come along with that program. And then finally, I have a personal message for you I want to throw out there. And then I think after I finish this, what may be the golden apple in this is I'm going to bring a panel of mayors up here that have just gone through the disaster or went through one 9 years ago to tell you what to expect. All right? So hopefully that will be very beneficial for you as you prepare for that. So let's go with the myths. Here's myth number 1. A tornado hits your town and generates a lot of debris. FEMA and MEMA are itching to show up and pick it up for you. You do know that when I show up to town, they say, "Where's your trucks?" No, it really isn't that way. Is every entity has the legal responsibility to pick up their own debris. All right? So if the storm is large enough for a federal declaration, FEMA can reimburse you for that, a good portion of it. But really, it is your legal responsibility. Here's another myth. Picking up debris is cheap. I don't know if that's even a myth. There's something another level there, right? It is not. So that's a myth. All right, you can present if you want.
No.
Okay, good. Okay. You can have it. All right, myth number 2. A large privately owned company within your city gets hit by a significant event. FEMA's going to reimburse the city to fix that building. The key word is private. They should have insurance. It will not count toward a federal declaration. It may help capture how big the storm was, but really the data in that does not count. I'm sorry, here's the truth. Let the words say it better. Privately owned businesses do not qualify for FEMA's public assistance program. Those businesses that may be eligible for SBA. Yes?
When you say reimbursement, are you talking about replacement costs or value?
And we're going to talk about that later on. So keep that in there. But the key on this myth here is you have a privately owned business and you try to claim that to get a federal declaration. That doesn't come into the equation. All right, next myth. The city hires a debris removal contractor, and that debris removal contractor says, I got so much experience that I will also monitor that. Now, so debris contracts are one of the most abused programs out there, not contracts. Debris is the most abused program out there because I've seen trucks fill up with debris. I've seen them drive through the dump. I've seen them come out the back side of the dump and never emptied it and go back around and circle 4 or 5 times and keep getting ticking. So FEMA will pay to have somebody monitor that company picking up debris. But it simply cannot be that same company. So if a company says that to you, I'm just going to do it myself, tell them, no thank you. All right, next myth, all disasters are absolutely identical. Not even close. Not even close. It can look the same, it can hit the same counties, it can hit the same cities, but they all have their own characteristics. They all do it. They're never, ever the same. All right, here's another one. Immediately after a storm hits, you should hire the first contractor or consultant that comes knocking at your door because they're obviously the best person to do the job. The first one. And they'll promise you, I'm going to get you everything reimbursed, everything. The very first one. Well, here's the truth. Immediately after a storm, you're going to have many, many new friends and experts showing up on there. Be very wise how you procure those contracts. Here's another one. Recovery is quick, simple, and easy. Anybody want to venture a response to that? All right, I was raised in Arkansas, so I'm pretty close to Mississippi, so my responses are nope, nope, and nope. It's not quick, it's not simple, you will lose sleep, it's just a long process, all right? So those are some myths, some other myths that I did not include there. One myth is when you see Clayton French show up to your town, he's bringing an empty checkbook. They have never trusted me with an empty checkbook, especially with my empty account that goes along with that. So that is a myth. There are some myths out there that we need the governor to declare a state of emergency because that's going to automatically bring FEMA dollars in there. It's a myth. It's a myth. All it is just saying, hey, we've got an event that's going to be beyond our capability to solve. I've got a state of emergency. It really doesn't come with a lot of tangible dollars with that state of emergency. It's that federal declaration that counts. All right? So that very quickly was some of the myths that I kind of picked up, but I want to talk about now. How do you get a federal declaration when you've had a storm? All right, we're government, there is a process. Now, if you've got multiple casualties, you can bypass some of these steps. You're going to eventually have to go back to them, all right? But this is the standard. I'm going to walk through these one slide at a time for the steps coming up, but the disaster hits, locals, let me emphasize this, locals conduct their own damage assessments. How many of your communities, cities, have been trained on how to conduct damage assessments? A few of you, right? That's great. A lot of hands didn't go up. We can offer that training because really, that's the local responsibility to do that. Once that happens, that data gets sent to the state will go out and validate it. Once the state validates, we'll find out the counties that have met those kind of thresholds. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then if they've met those thresholds and if it appears that the disaster is big enough for a federal declaration, then I will write a letter to FEMA to send some inspectors out there to validate our validations. They'll provide those to us. If they look like they're to the level to request a federal declaration, then I'll draft a request for the governor to sign. He'll send it off to the president, and then we'll wait for that decision. All right, so we'll go through these steps. But I want to talk about, once that decision is made, I want to talk just very briefly about these two programs. I'll talk a little bit more later. The first one is individual assistance. If we get a federal declaration and the disasters are significant to award that program, individual, keyword, individual assistance, that helps individuals. Their house is destroyed, this, that, and the other. it helps individuals, and FEMA will deal directly with that individual. The other program is called public assistance. It's a terrible name, because aren't individuals part of the public? Yes, they are. But this word actually describes the public government, the gathering, the cities, the towns, the counties, all those. Not individuals, but the government agencies of that. All right, and there's certain private nonprofits that also fit into that, so that helps with reimbursement of those costs that are kind of listed up there. All right, so that's kind of the two big programs that come along with it. All right, so how do I get a federal declaration? It's all about the numbers. It really is. It's data driven. It's all about the numbers. For the individual assistance grant, when we start looking at that, we count destroyed houses and majorly damaged houses. I'll describe those in just a little bit. All right, the number of those, the quantity of those. The public assistance grant, on the other hand, it's for those government agencies, the counties, the cities. It is how much does it cost to restore it to the day before the disaster. Now, sometimes the state is asked to come out and do damage assessments, and I'll walk up to your town and I'll say, like, all right, so you've got the city hall received damages. How much is it going to cost to fix that? And that's the number I need, right? My folks don't have that expertise to look at your city hall and see how much. Your county engineer, your city engineer needs to provide that data. Some other things we'll talk about is insurance, how that plays in that as well, all right? So it's all about the numbers. For individual assistance, it's the numbers of houses that are majorly damaged or destroyed, and for public assistance, how much to restore to pre-disaster condition. All right, step number 1 on that flow chart. Oh, my screen's a little bit different. All right, there are other factors for that individual assistance that have to be weighed in there. So it's all about the numbers, but we have to back it up with these other things. Does the state have the capacity to fix it all? If not, the governor said, I need Fed help. Uninsured and personal insurance. So if everybody's house that was destroyed is all insured, we don't need the government to come in and fix it. All state. That's what the commercial says, we'll fix it. All right. Disaster impacted population profiles, the impact to community infrastructure when hospitals, nursing homes, those kinds of things get destroyed. There's another level of concern there. Casualties will always ring true. And then finally, disaster-related unemployment. Those are some of the factors for the individual assistance. But now let's go to step number 1. All right. A disaster hits. And I've got to fill out a form that goes along with the governor's letter to the president. And there's all kinds of disasters out there. There's droughts, there's hurricanes, there's mudslides, there's tidal waves. If we ever get a tidal wave, I will go ahead for you, submit my resignation. We don't need a tidal wave here. Tropical storms, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, others, and yes, we have done others, even in the last 5 years. So there are many things that happen. Some of these are a little bit more predictable than others. Hurricane, you kind of see it getting ready to happen. Tornadoes, not so much. All right, so the disaster hits. Step number 2, the locals perform their damage assessments. All right, it is the local government's responsibility to do damage assessments. I will be in exhibit booth 933 today, or some of the MEMA staff will be there. If your county or city has not been trained in how to do damage assessments, I'm going to encourage you to get with your county EMA or stop by our booth, sign up, and we'll get you set up for damage assessment training. All right? But it is the local government's responsibility to conduct those initial damage assessments. They gather that information and they share it with the state. All right, so once again, this is kind of the step through this is a FEMA document, so I'm not going to read it to you, but it's a step series as well. That you do your damage assessments, you send it to the state send it, ask the feds to come in, we validate it, we send it off. But really, contact your county EMA if your city needs training on how to do damage assessments. All right, I talked about individual assistance, and really numbers drive a federal declaration. It really is driven by destroyed and major damage. That sounds a little bit more significant than minor and affected. And I'll kind of talk about those. But along with those, there are different categories as you assess a house that was damaged by a storm. All right, is it a conventionally built house or is it a mobile home? Because there are different criteria for those. Is it flood damage or not flood damage? Is it insured? Is it somebody's primary residence or is it their summer home? All right, those factors have to come into play.
When we had a named hurricane went through, State Farm automatically switched our insurance by state law to 7% of the house value. And when that happened, I lost $14,000. And my insurance would not cover any of it. Would they step in and help me with that?
We would have to go. I'm not prepared for that. Yeah. Yeah. So if you'll stop by booth 933 today, we'll discuss that. I'm unaware of it. Okay. It may take me some work to do on that. All right. Here's a picture of destroyed. Here's that first level. It's obvious from that picture. Those houses right there in Rolling Fork were destroyed. All right. But FEMA has actual criteria. Only the foundation remains, complete failure of 2 or more components, mobile home frame is twisted, it goes on. All right? So there's really a checklist to figure out where these find them. So that's destroyed. The next level is a major. And so you kind of see that picture of that tree falling through the house. It's not just a tree on the house, the tree falling through the house, the branch poked a hole, in over the living space. That makes it a major. All right, so when you do your damage assessments, you list it as major. The state will come out and validate it and list it as major as well. I promise I'll tie this all together here shortly. All right, minor and affected, I kind of lump those together. Non-structural damage to a house. That tree is just sitting over a carport right now. Yeah, it probably messed up the carport a little bit, but it's not over living space. So typically we like to look at it this way. If it's your house and the shingle's missing, man, that thing's destroyed. You see it on the news all the time. My house is destroyed. The palm trees leaning at 60-degree angle. My house is destroyed. We have to back up a little bit and kind of look at the criteria and see how it fits. Public assistance is a little bit different. Remember, individual assistance is for individuals, their households. Public assistance is the town of Walnut, Tippah County. I saw your shirt, that's why I said it. So, and power is starting to be restored up in here from last night, just to let you know. All right. So public assistance is based on cost. All right. The first cost, how much does it cost to pick up debris? So you've got to send your city engineer out there to kind of calculate how much debris is out there. All right. So it's a little bit of work. So that's for debris. The next is cost. Another category is how much it costs. You've gone into overtime with your police force. You set barricades out. That's a cost that you can capture. The next cost to capture is roads. The cost to repair that storm damaged road. And so when FEMA ever does come out to validate that, they will ask the question, how do you know, that sounds kind of asinine when you say it, how do you know that that road was damaged by that storm? And you and I were looking at it like, come on, man, as well. But you've got to have some form of records that you maintain that thing, because FEMA's automatically say, like, so how do I know this wasn't damaged by another storm just like this before? You've got to have some kind of maintenance records that you've got out there and fixed that or looked at it or screeded it or pushed it or something like that. So FEMA has come back to county and said, I'm not reimbursing you for that repair because you can't demonstrate the condition of it was before. I've tried to tell counties when they said, we don't have the time to put a electronic system out there to capture all our roads and their conditions, but you get a spiral notebook and write it down, that's a maintenance record. That will hold up in court. So cost to repair storm damaged roads is another cost. Next one is cost to rebuild government buildings minus insurance. All right, so if you've got buildings that are damaged out there, if you've got vehicles that were damaged out there, publicly owned vehicles out there, then those are costs that can be claimed. And then if you have any utilities that the city, the municipal is responsible for, the Clayton City Power Association, those are eligible costs to capture. And then finally, kind of a catch-all category is cost to restore ballparks on the coast, piers, things that don't fit cleanly in other category. You know, you can capture those as long as the city is legally responsible for that piece. So it is all about capturing the costs. Now, for public assistance, you keep hearing the word out there, threshold. There's a threshold out there. All right, so the threshold for public assistance is a formula, and it's based on the 2020 census population. And the state threshold right now for a disaster is $1.77 per citizen on the 2020 census. So per capita, that comes up to $5.2 million. $5.2 million. The county has a threshold too that they have to meet, and that's $4.44 per capita. $4.44. So if you take your 2020 census, multiply by 444, you know what your county threshold is. Now let me throw this out there. Let's just say I see Richland up here. Let's just say in their county the threshold is, I'm making up a number here, $250,000, and they've got $300,000 worth of damage. Do they get a declaration? The answer is, have we met the state threshold? So we need the other counties to play too. Now, if Richland had $15 million, I'm not trying to wish anything, $15 million worth of damage, they have met their county and state threshold. All right, so it is a math. So I try to encourage cities to don't stop when you reach your county threshold, because you may have other counties that didn't get hit as bad. You may be standing on your own. You may be standing with just a couple more. Get your damage assessments and complete them fully. All right. So if your county, let's just say they don't meet the county threshold, but they've been damaged by the storm. If they don't meet their threshold, their numbers don't count toward the 5.2. All right. So it's everybody playing. We have the state insurance commissioner bought a program for us called Crisis Track. And every county has been trained on how to use Crisis Track. It is our damage assessment tool. It is virtual. Send your county, city folks out there with training in the system. They can take pictures with their phone, they can upload it, and instantly at the State Emergency Operations Center, Clayton French can see those damage assessments. I no longer have to send somebody out in the field and say, hey, scout, go out there and find this thing. You all can load this up in there. You find the right event, we'll create one that starts getting uploaded, and I can see what your numbers are that you're inputting. I can see how many damaged houses out there. I can see pictures of the damaged houses, so I can see that there is a tree over the living space. It's called Crisis Track. It gives me a great picture as well. So this is Hurricane Zeta, and I can see that there was $45 million worth of damage assessments for Hurricane Zeta. I can write a pretty good declaration request on that amount right there. I can also see how many houses were majorly destroyed, damaged as well. So this is a great thing. So when you sign up to have your city or town trained on damage assessments, we'll train you how to use this system. It's free to you. It's free to you. All right, step number 3. Well, that's just more of what I just said. So if you need training on that, come by and see us at booth 933, or get with your county emergency management agency. So Ken Strachan from the mayor of North Carrollton, I need you to get with your EMA director in Carroll County, right? He's one and the same, in case you didn't know that. All right. Step number 4. Once those assessments are out there, the state will come out and validate. All right. We've got to validate that. So I'll send folks out there. They'll go out there and they'll make sure, all right, this is correct, and they'll certify that as well. All right. So step number 3 is the state will go out and validate that. Step number 4. Once I find the counties that have met their county threshold, and it looks like we're going to have more than $5.2 million in public assistance, or the house damage is sufficient, then I will request FEMA to come out and do their validations. And I have to request them by county. I just can't say I need FEMA to come out here and do the state's validation. I've got to request them by county, so you've got to get your data in. Next step is FEMA will come out. They'll validate our validations. It sounds kind of strange, but they'll do that. And they will do that validation with the state present and with the locals present as well. Then they will provide me their information, their validated information. I will take that, I'll draft the request for a federal declaration. It is a long letter describing those 6 factors I talked about, how the impact of the storm. It'll describe the numbers and everything else. The form will also indicate the programs that we're going to request. So the governor will sign that. He'll send it to the president. He'll send me a copy, and I'll send it to FEMA. And then the FEMA will send it off to president. Now, from the day the storm left the state to this point right here, we've got to do it within 30 days. Now, what's going on in your community in the first week or 2 or 3? Chaos. It's chaos. You know, so that's why it's even more important that we get some folks in your communities trained how to do damage assessment. The quicker we can get on that, the quicker we can beat this threat. Because we can request an extension, we'd rather not. What happens if we don't get it, you know, of the 30 days? So really, it's a hustle to get it all done. And then, if it's approved, the time frame for the president to make a decision, I've seen it done in 3 hours, I've seen it done in 3 months. And usually the 3 or 4 monthers are like denials as well. Sometimes it's a yay, so it's kind of strange. So I know to expect in my office that I'll be called by all of you and all your county boards, you know, many, many, many times till we get that answer. So there is no specific time frame for that. We all have time frames, the feds don't. All right, all see it. And then if we get this approved, then FEMA shows up. Depending on the program, whatever programs that the president initiates, FEMA will show up to those declared counties. And let me highlight that. Disasters are declared by county. So Amory got hammered. I saw Mayor Walker there. Rolling Fork got hammered, but they were designated as Monroe County got the declaration, and Sharkey got the declaration. All right, so it's all working through the county. So they're designated by counties. So as we go through this again, all of these steps have to be accomplished in 30 days. 30 days. And I apologize. It feels like I'm rushing you to get your assessments done because I have to write that letter of support based on the assessments. So if the assessments come to me on day number 29, and I gotta make this thing match and get the governor's signature, you know, it's a hustle. So we're all hustling at that time. All right. Once again, the major programs, individual assistance, that is for individuals. All right. Individuals and families who have sustained losses. Public assistance grant program is for those government entities, certain private nonprofits. All right. What are some of the things that come with the individual assistance program? This is only 1/10 of the things that for individuals out there. There's housing, there's crisis counseling, there's the direct lease program, there's a direct housing program, there's emergency assistance, there's volunteer agency. There are many, many programs for individuals if you get a declaration. But the individuals have to sign up. FEMA has made it easier. You can sign up online. You know, used to you have to go to a certain center to do it. You can now sign up online. And then everybody will have to disclose, you know, a lot of personal item and information so they can get the right program to help them recover. These slides will be available. We'll get that word out. So for Hurricane Ida, just as an example here, you know, here's kind of the damage assessment data here. But there are about 1,800 individuals approved for individual assistance, some of their programs, at over $6.6 million going out to individuals. There's another program called Other Needs. There are almost 1,300 of those approved. $1.3 million. And the SBA, whenever we get individual assistance, we always get SBA. And so that can help your businesses out there as well. And if your county is declared, but your neighbor counties aren't, and you get individual assistance, SBA will automatically, if you're contingent, if you touch that county, even 1 inch, your county will get an SBA declaration as well. Opportunities there. All right, so once again, that's individual assistance. All right, some of the things with public assistance. Basically, 75% federal reimbursement for debris removal, emergency protective measures, bridge and road repairs, building facilities, and then government-owned utility repairs as well. We'll talk very quickly about some of these. All right, some notes here. Costs are based on replacing it back to pre-condition. You know, so there's a program out there that if you want to improve it, you can. If you get replacement value, you can. But the value is going to be assessed of what it would have cost to put it back the way that it was. It's got to be the legal responsibility of that local government. You can't be getting money from Allstate and then claim to get the same money from the federal government. That's duplication of benefits. You will be caught. And then you have to provide maintenance records as well, that those roads and buildings were being kept and used. All right, just kind of a capture of Hurricane Zeta, different storm. Looks like 8 counties were declared. For public assistance, there's $50 million worth of debris picked up. Emergency protective measures were almost $5 million. Roads and bridges, 3.5. Public buildings, $8.5 million. Public utilities, almost $19 million. And all those other categories out there, $22 million. Hurricane Zeta. You probably need that reimbursement out there. I'm just saying. All right. There's another program that's ancillary that kind of comes along with that, and that is our hazard mitigation program. So if we get a federal declaration on the request, we're also going to circle hazard mitigation and note that, so that if we get a federal declaration and we circle that hazard mitigation, we will automatically get some mitigation funds for non-damaged things statewide. So if Carroll County got a major declaration and we requested hazard mitigation and it got approved, then automatically the coffers for mitigation will open up for the other 81 counties as well, all right, for non-damaged. All right. Typically, what we get out of a mitigation grant, people need generators, people need sirens, people need things like that. So these are things that will help benefit communities as well. All right. Dispelled some myths on disaster. I'm sorry. My message here. Here's my message to you. Some of you may not know who your county emergency manager is. You need to know them. You don't have to like them. I like some of them, I don't like some of them, you know. Some of them like me, some of them don't like me. It's all good. But you need to know who they are, because they're kind of your key to some state people. Train your employees on damage assessments. And if I could foot stomp something right now, that's what needs to happen. And then prepare your employees and citizens for that. So here's where we have been in the last 35 minutes. All right, we talked about some of those myths out there. We talk about the method of obtaining a federal declaration, and it's simply more than, I need a federal declaration, I need a state of emergency. That's automatic. It doesn't work that way. It's a process. We have to go through the process. The major programs, we talked about individual assistance and public assistance, and then the hazard mitigation. And finally, just a little quick message from me. Know who the EMA director is, and get your folks trained. A lot of folks want to get involved. And I know you're busy. A lot of you folks are already involved. You can get some help and get them trained on how to do damage assessments. So, I ask you, this is a rhetorical question, how prepared is your community for this? Some of you have just come into office, you know, and all the offices, as you were promised, would just kiss babies and hug and be on TV. And then a storm shows up and you're on TV, all right, but it's the difficult times. All right, so how prepared are you for this? So here's what I want to do at this time. I have selected 4 mayors, those that have just gone through a disaster, to kind of tell you some things of what they expected, what they didn't expect, some of those things there. And then I've got one more mayor that went through disaster 9 years ago, and the steps he went through, and where that community is 9 years later. Mayor Glenn, I'll just do some preparatory things. How long have you been in your present position?
So we're first term, right? So we're basically 2 years in, and it's all brand new to us. From a municipality standpoint, this is serial number 1 for us as it relates to the storm. So this is our first term.
All right. So how many declared events have you worked previously, and then in your current position?
So actually, I've actually been through another event when Smithville got hit back earlier, 11, I guess it was. EF5 there went through and was part of that, not from a government standpoint, but from an individual standpoint. As it relates to the mayor's side, again, serial number 1 for me as it relates to going through this storm at the end of March.
So if you wouldn't mind, describe what this latest storm, the impact it has had on your community.
So we had approximately 1,477 homes or businesses that were either moderately or severely destroyed through the process. Those of you guys that have been through Amory, it's an older municipality. We have approximately 6,666, hate the number, citizens there, small community. But the landscape, right, it's forever changed. A lot of the bigger trees, Amory's known for the optics of it, the big trees and things like that. 2/3 of that, Clayton, is destroyed. We had approximately 2,100 light poles and things that were out. Our water system went down. So 2/3 of the community was basically destroyed throughout this process.
How about the people? What was the impact to them?
So as it relates to, I guess, their mindset and everything, this is, as Clayton said earlier, it's not if we're going to have a storm, it's when. We knew that things were coming about attention to us. It seems like Mississippi, particularly in the region we're at, and I pray for Louisville. It seems like Louisville right now seems to be the epicenter of everything that comes through. But digressing back, you ask about the people. We sensed something was coming, but being prepared for it, I guess you never get there. We've come a long ways through the process. There's still some PTSD as it relates to people seeing things and things like that, but the people are good.
All right, so your storm happened March. It's been a long time. March 24, 25-ish. This is 3 months. What still keeps you up at night? What keeps you anxious?
The next one. 48 hours after the storm, after we removed that, we walked through SARS and everything, search and rescue. And as we walked through that, fortunately, Amory proper, we didn't have any deaths. The county, we had 3 associated with it. The storm never really hit the ground. But asking I guess we walked through that, Amory 2.0 coming back and trying to keep our assessed values up and things like that. But, honestly, the next storm, I mean, really and truly, we walked through the night of the 24th, 25th, and honestly, within 3 days, we had another storm come right back to us.
I think I've tracked, 4 or 5 since then.
Yeah.
So, is there any, maybe, your town, and we'll talk about others, got hammered. And what were some of your immediate concerns, maybe budget-wise or financially?
Yeah, so when we walked through SARS, the immediate thing that we did, we started having groups fly in where we talked about our debris removal side, our monitoring agent. We were fully contracted within 6 days of the storm, and we started the process. We knew we needed that debris out of there, and we thought we knew the number of financial impact. We're a small community. We're fortunate just being candid, we probably had $11 million in the bank at the time, and to go along with our operating budget and things. But on the debris removal side, I guess one of my aldermen just sitting here, we've wrote checks to the tune of about $6 million thus far, so it's depleted us. So when you ask about that, it's just pure cash flow management and worrying about when, sir, you were going to pay me or pay the municipality is keeping the agent detail down and the cash flow, flipping it from what I owed to the vendors, right, versus when you were going to turn the cash. So we went out, we seeked some bridge financing. We were able to secure that. We walked through a lot of our resources, hint, hint. So anyways, but
That's why I invited you here.
it's been a challenge, and you guys will go through that, and these other mayors are going through that right now. Is trying to figure out cash flow. So that's been a concern.
And so we've got $3 million coming to you as soon as the Department of Finance Administration is open up. You're the first payment. So.
Awesome.
So how prepared was your community for this event?
As it relates to the community, I don't think you ever, I mean, if you were good at preparing for this, you'd be in your business, right? So I don't think you ever fully prepare for it. As it relates to the municipality, I've learned a lot about my department heads. I've learned a lot about my staff, my aldermen. It's been a nonstop, just like the balance of this panel up here. When you go through these things, it's nonstop. But as far as being prepared, honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better group to walk through it with. The community itself, we were in a good place. I mean,
So if you were to offer advice to these other mayors out there in Alderman, what would it, if you had a single or two things, or three things, what would you advise them?
know your inventories, know your asset values, know your insurance. And I'll call names, I don't mind it. We're travelers. I've used them in a different capacity in a different professional career, had great success for them, and if any of you guys work for them or family, it's been slow. It's been a slow process. We've pulled in out of about $6 million worth of claims we've got on just the municipality side. We've pulled in about $500,000. So know your insurance side, know what you've got out there, keep your inventories up where they need to be, and just stay in tune with this, because as Clayton said earlier, guys, ladies, it's not if you're going to have a storm. I mean, you're going to have something in Mississippi, and this just is what it is. You know, along with this panel, which are educated on it, probably more so than I, we stand ready, and I'll speak for them. I mean, we stand ready to hold your hand when you go through things like this, is to call upon us. But just be prepared as much as you can, because it's going to happen to you. It's going to happen to you. I'm 54 years old, and I've never seen anything like this Amory proper. We've experienced it in adjacent areas, but you better prepare, because it's going to happen to you. It's going to happen to you. It may not be in your term or whatever, but it's going to happen to your community.
All right, thank you, Mayor Glenn. We may come back to you with questions in a little bit. Next, I want to introduce Mayor Ken Strachan. He is the mayor of North Carrollton and also the EMA director. I don't know how he does this for Carroll County. So Ken, I want to kind of ask you, you heard the question I asked Mayor Glenn, kind of the same thing. And I know that this storm didn't really impact maybe so much the town of North Carrollton, but how about the community of Carroll County?
The municipalities was under the tornado warning on March 24th. The affected areas was the Black Hawk community and the Summerfield community in Carroll County, which was both of them in the southern part, which is south of 82 Highway. There were 3 deaths that occurred with March 24th tornado. And before I was mayor, I had served 3 terms. I was the county coroner for 12 years. And before I was EMA, I had been the county coroner. And in any disaster, that's the worst thing. is the loss of life. We can sign declarations and do all day long. It's not going to bring back or change the loss of life. And as sad as it is, and as bad as it is, that happens in these disasters. Back in 2018, we had a straight line wind come through North Carolina. About 2:30 in the morning, I thought the roof was gonna come off my house. Anyway, I got out, got to looking, and I called the fire chief. I said, these streets are blocked. We had 7 streets blocked, which was all the main entrances in our town, population of 435 people. I said, I want you to, he said, don't move nothing. I said, could we get a hold of energy? I said, because of the light lines, I want y'all to man the streets, because if it start getting up, they're gonna go to work day. Some people might not know what's going on. It was dark, can't see much at night. The more I looked, and the more we got toward daylight, the worse everything looked. I called the sheriff. I asked him to have inmates from the Carrollton Montgomery Correctional Facility to come. I said, as soon as the energy gets the lights straightened out, gets the power cut off, and everything, I said, fire department, if we can get the inmates. When I left the house at 2:30 that morning, I didn't walk back in it till 10 o'clock at night. We had everything cleaned up except for one street, and we had to wait because it was a guide wire to get it opened up. I wasn't the EMA, I was the mayor. I used prayer and a pen and a piece of paper and my phone to call on people. And between the fire department, MDOT, and the inmates from the Carrollton Montgomery Correctional Facility, we had a recovery. Like I said, we had every street open that night by 10 o'clock except for one. Well, somewhere in the middle of that, I got to thinking, I said, I want to help my whole county. I said, and I got to reading up on about the emergency management director. Every county's got one. I said, through this whole county's towns and communities, and I want us to be able to work with others and when disasters come. So, about 2 months later, the county EMA decided to retire. I put an application in. I told the board of supervisors, I said, I'm gonna be your employee. I understand I work for y'all. And I laid out pretty much what I just told y'all. And in 2019, no sooner than I walked in the door, we had a flood. And in that flooding event, we got a declaration. And there are 2 things that are very important to municipalities, I found out, is you need to do a resolution requesting the governor proclaim a state of emergency and a proclamation of the existence of a local emergency. What I did then is the county signed it during that flood. It's the same form right here, and we passed them around. I made some copies for everybody to see. And all 3 municipalities did, in which we got a federal declaration. We got one in 19 and 20. I look at Haley Barber during Katrina as my role model. He said that in these things you got to recover, but you also got to work to build things back and build them back better. An example right here where we had on the coast, as we see from where they did the good work from Katrina and recovery. Come along in 2023, we still doing work on these declarations. We had to get an extension. COVID, the pandemic come in the middle of it, that changed things. And what Clayton was talking about on crisis track, I got it here on my phone. And this is where I do the documentation for Carroll County. And on March 20th, we had met with MEMA about the extension on these other 2 declarations in February this year. And then the tornado come on March 24th at 9:26 p.m. The Carroll County Emergency Operations Center got their first call on the damage of the tornado that happened that night. Well, I was up there that night and I had the first board of supervisors sign the release. Signed it left at 150. We done a damage report we sent to MEMA called a DR2 that the county EMA does. And that morning, as it got daylight, we could see what we was doing. I took crisis track, and along with David Shaw, he's the area coordinator. He's one of our area coordinators. We divided up. We covered Summerfield and Blackhawk. I took the pictures, and this thing here, it generates the coordinates. I mean, you can't. They know you're out there. You're not like sitting in the office and putting in an address. You take that picture, you put it in, it's going to generate the coordinates where you're standing at, and Clayton and them can see it and Pearl over at the headquarters. So anyway, we done them all day that day. And then along with, we had these declaration of emergency signed. I had the supervisor sign it. Like I said, start with the president board at 1 o'clock that morning, and then we had them filed and to sent with MEMA as soon as we got the rest of the signatures. Well, my plan was on Sunday morning I was going to get up, we was going to do more damage assessments. Well, anyway, I woke up and we done had a federal declaration. They done seen what all was going on and the damage that we had. In this thing, I learned something every disaster, every one of them we have. But the main thing is working together, because we work with MEMA and FEMA, faith-based organization in other counties. And down here, these meetings I've been going to over the last several years, all the friendships I made down here, I called in, and people come, other mayors, other towns, and I couldn't ask for anything better. I mean, from the work that MEMA done, FEMA, faith-based organizations, and other agencies. But working together, and the main key is that county emergency management director. That is the one that you need to coordinate with and work with, and then that makes a difference. With counties and towns working together, I mean, y'all in that same boat together, and that will help make a difference. It's going to make a difference in your recovery and in your long run. And one of the things here that I'm working on for is mitigation, and one of the slides that he had was about mitigation a little while ago. In our county, we have 3 weather sirens. We have 3 towns: Carrollton, North Carrollton, and Dayton. At the EOC, that's where they're activated at. Carrollton and North Carrollton join each other. Dayton's on the southern end of the county. Carrollton and North Carrollton's on the same switch. Dayton's on a different one because it's far apart. It could be different weather going on in place. One of the things I want to look at in mitigation is being able to get weather sirens to put out at Summerfield, out at Blackhawk, and out at places like that. Because in with the rural areas that got affected by the storm. And then there are lots of other things with mitigation, but that's one of the things that we're looking at in Carroll County.
All right, thank you, sir. Next will be Mayor Walker from Rolling Fork. Now, on March the 24th, we knew bad weather was coming, but then it kind of like dissipated a little bit, and it kind of like disappeared. So we didn't let our guard down, but we kind of relaxed a little bit. And so on my way home, then my phone started going off like, Issaquena and now Sharkey County being hit by a storm. So once I got to the house, I realized the significance of that damage. So I'm letting you know, these things come out of virtually nowhere. So, without any further ado, next mayor will be Mayor Walker from Rolling Fork. So, Mayor, if I could prompt you a few questions, but then I'm going to turn it over to you as well. So, how long have you been in your current position? And you might have to go right up.
Okay. Good morning. I've it'll be a total of 17 years off and on.
You're crazy. No, but go ahead, sir. All right, so you've been in that office for quite some time, and did you expect this storm really to come up? And I'm not going to ask you the frivolous question of to have the impact it was, because nobody could end that. But how prepared for you that night of, or that afternoon of?
Well, the afternoon of, we were not prepared. The storm came upon us very quickly. In fact, my wife and I was in my home. We were watching Channel 16 News, and they were tracking the storm. The meteorologist came up and he said, if you're in Rolling Fork, Mississippi, a big tornado is on its way. Take cover. By the time he said that, one of my county deputies was communicating on the radio. He keyed up. He said, I'm south of Rolling Fork, Mississippi. I'm approaching my home. The windows are busting out of my house. He got off the radio. He keyed up again. And when he keyed up again, his words were, it's on the ground. The storm entered Rolling Fork from the south side of the community. It hit the ground and it traveled northeast in Rolling Fork. On the ground. It never got up. It kept going in the northeast direction, according to the reports, all the way from Rolling Fork, Sharkey County, over into Silver City. in Humphreys County, Mississippi. The storm speed was somewhere in the neighborhood of 175, 180 miles an hour. Same storm that affected Amory, affected Rowland. It was devastating. All of our communities lost a great deal of infrastructure, family homes and properties. But I want to share something with the mayors, aldermen, and laymen about preparedness. I have always believed, I served 8 years of those 17 years on the Board of Supervisors, how important it is to be prepared for a storm before it hits. What do I mean by that? I mean making sure that every department in your county, in your city, knows his or her responsibility in the event of a storm. It's imperative to have a good working relationship with your emergency management personnel so that you can have mock drills, roundtable discussions that lays out the responsibility for each party that's involved. Particularly in our case in Rolling Fork, because we're a rural, small community. We're about 54 miles north of Vicksburg, Mississippi, and we're about 42 miles from Greenville, Mississippi. We're center point on Highway 61. We may have interlocal agreements with other larger municipalities, but it takes them some time to get to us in the event like the one we just experienced on the 24th. That's why it's important that your local people know exactly what to do, how to do it, when we face these type of critical situations like we did in Rolling Fork. I'm happy to say, after the storm hit, Vicksburg, Mississippi responded quickly, Greenville, Mississippi responded quickly, Indianola, most of the local cities and municipalities came in, and everybody went to work. We had 14 casualties. But if you take a look at the damage and assess the damages in Rolling Fork, Mississippi, it should have been a lot more. Ladies and gentlemen, we've lost a lot, but we look forward to gaining much, much more. Because as you often heard, when things like this happen and you rebuild to be better. And that's exactly what all of us are doing in our cities. There's another thing that's important to me. Review your insurance coverage. Make sure you know what your city has. Make sure you understand your replacement value on city properties. Increase it, and you can scratch the word decrease out because nothing is going down. Everything continues to go up. And again, I say communicate with your disaster response people. Keep in mind that you may have to have a grant manager again, a debris hauler. All of these things are important for us to keep in the back of our heads because we never know when we have to deal with these type of situations again. So when we do that, we won't be under the gun. When something happens, everything is already in place. Provide weather alert radios, if you can, to your community. Now that we've had the tornado in Rolling Fork, Mississippi, people are asking, Mayor Walker, we need some radios. But this conversation has never come up before. But when you go through a situation like this, it puts a lot of things on your mind that never was there. So we're just happy to be where we are now. Our community we're right at 90% of the debris picked up. We're seeing new homes being rebuilt. We're seeing our businesses that lost everything they had rebuilding. So we're moving forward. But we've got a long way to go in Rolling Fork, as well as these other cities who are represented here today. But we're much better off now than what we were a few weeks ago.
You answered almost all my questions, and I appreciate that. So is there anything particular right now that maybe keeps you up at night?
Yes, what keeps me up is at night, my displaced families who are staying in the hotels, who don't have a home to come back to Rolling Fork to, my renters who were renting and their landlords have told them we're not building back. That keeps me up at night. The families that have been defected of single parents with children, no place to go. So that's why we're working hard with FEMA and MEMA, and as quickly as we possibly can to provide a safe haven for these folk. That keeps me up at night. Can you imagine what it's like to not have a place to lay your head and for your children to lay down and be cared for? Can you imagine that? That keeps me up at night. So if we can resolve that and get a place for them to stay, even under temporary measures, temporary for 18 months or more would allow them an opportunity to find a permanent place to go. But that temporary housing will give them an opportunity to sit down and assess what they're going to do for their families and themselves. That's the thing that keeps me up at night.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've kind of heard some themes here as well. Cash flow probably as well, with the community as well, right? I also heard Mayor Strachan say volunteers are extremely important, but they can get out of hand too, so there's something as well. And then establishing relationships. You know, we all like to operate in our own little silos, but you got cities, municipalities, and counties right next door. They're Mississippians. They want to help. All right. So the last mayor I've got on this panel is Mayor Will Hill from Louisville in 2014. They had a significant size event that impacted them. So Mayor Hill, how long have you been in position now, and then how long were you in your position at that time?
I was first elected mayor in 2009, and I was in the beginning of the second term when this disaster hit.
So kind of describe 9 years ago, relive that for us just a little bit, please.
Do we have all day?
We have 20 minutes, okay.
Clayton knows. First of all, Clayton, being that it was 9 years ago, is one of the mainstays, has been involved with us with our disaster from the beginning, and that continuity has been great. And I want to publicly just thank Clayton for all of his involvement and friendship, because you don't know much about FEMA or MEMA until you have to know that. And the first thing I knew about him was the light blue shirts for MEMA, dark blue shirts for FEMA. And that was about the extent of what I knew about disaster recovery. To just talk a little bit about the event itself, and you hear how catastrophic these are. This tornado ripped through our county 30 plus miles on the ground, roughly a mile wide. The worst was 10 fatalities in our county. Like the mayor said, when I looked at it, I would have guessed that it would have been far greater than that. We did a missing persons report, and it was pages overnight. The fact that it was only 10 is a blessing, but we must not ever forget that that's the ones that lost the most. Property can be replaced. We had over 400 residents destroyed. We lost 1 million square feet of industrial space in our town, and our hospital was hit directly. Talking about preparedness, one of the things you have to be prepared for is an audible. You can prepare all you want, have a playbook, but you better be ready to respond and react accordingly. In this particular case, obviously there's injuries. Where's everybody trying to go? To the emergency room. Our hospital was hit. They're trying to evacuate the hospital and remove all the nursing home residents at the same time, which in turn utilized what would be our normal shelter. So we were moving to Plan B, Plan C, Plan D, all within the first 12 and 24 hours. Days after, at some point, Clayton and I revisited about this earlier this year. I have no idea what day and did not want to do it, and I was resistant to it, to be honest with you. Was pulled away to a visit in Smithville to discuss, and I didn't even know other communities were hit that day. I was so consumed with what was happening in my piece of the world that Brandon, Tupelo, Lee County, Lowndes County, all of us joined together for a meeting in Smithville to discuss, because in 2011, as you well know, they were devastated. And in that day, I remembered vividly as I left Louisville, going through West Point. I wasn't driving, I'm on my phone responding, still probably have emails not answered from that time. I looked in West Point, things looked normal. People were going to Walmart, going to stores, traffic was moving, and I realized, well, life goes on. But I get there, and that day I find out too that, as y'all well know, there's a college study for everything. There's a study about why we have studies, I guess. There's a study done about what a disaster does to a community. And I'll never forget this. It said that obviously a disaster would change your community forever. And in that, you're only going to respond in one of two ways. There's not a third option. You're either going to be better or not. And at that moment, it was kind of like, we made a decision as community leaders and as I just made a commitment. We're going to come out of this stronger and better. So I say that to say that yes, be prepared, but more importantly, just be ready to respond and react.
So if you can remember back 9 years ago, what kept you up at night?
All
And
of
you
it.
have gotten some sleep, right?
All of it.
Okay.
I must say too, one of the, in the first 24 hours, National Guard was there for search and rescue, and a gentleman who later was involved with MEMA, I didn't know it. He walked up to me and he said, "Sir, I have three things for you. First, you're going to have to rest, but I can look at you and tell you're not," which I didn't. He said, "You're going to have to eat. You're not going to realize it, but you're not going to realize you're hungry." And that was true. And the third one is, he said, "Go put on a clean shirt, because in the morning, you're going to have more TV cameras than you've ever seen before." And boy, was he right. And that was part of just being ready to respond, react, lead, be aware, trying your best to be positive.
So for your community, what were maybe some things that helped your community along the road of recovery? Any events or something like that?
Well, I'll share this. In a time like this, there's no room for politics. I know all of us in this room have to follow the political process to hold the position that we have, and that's my least favorite part about being the mayor, is having to run for it. But the political side, there's no room for that. It's a matter of leading. We were project driven. Each project gave hope, and that was the main theme in our recovery, was just providing hope and celebrate each little milestone, whether it was debris removal, whether it was starting to build homes, starting to build a new business, making it known that our hospital was going to rebuild. Grabbing each one of those was significant in our recovery. My wife accuses me, which is true, I have a very weird quirkiness with alliterations, and it can be proven here. I put this little flyer together this year as I went through a little PTSD after the events of Rolling Fork and Amory. So much emotion, because at that same time, Clayton knows, 9 years later is when we closed out our MEMA disaster recovery in 2023, and our tornado was 2014. Patience, my friend. So again, what I'm telling you about the political nature, there's no room for that. Understanding that there are the processes, they may change. Trust the process. You can argue it, you can debate it, you can cuss it, you can discuss it. But if you want to get something achieved, we all know you gotta follow the processes. You'll hear the words about documenting and all of that. I have a lot of this outlined here as I put this together with so much emotions and realizing I was having some PTSD seeing what happened at Amory, Bowling Court, and from there a lot of emotions because we had just closed this out, seeing what happened. And with this, just real quickly, I have this about being hope, and using the letter B is beware and be aware. Not everybody that comes right after a disaster is there for the right reasons. There's a lot of dollar signs after a disaster, and there's a lot of greed, and there is some corruption, so you must be aware. And I mentioned that about rest and eating and that thing, breathe. You must believe, you must just be a leader. And I was told this a long time ago, and some of you already know this, that leadership can be lonely, especially in your community. Sometimes you're in a little silo by yourself. Being positive. And I know there's this idea of the glass must be, half full. Some of you, that's the optimist. Some of the pessimists, glass is half empty. But the reality is there's water in the glass. And that's what you have to respond to. Being positive is part of being at hope. But again, I'd be happy to share this with anybody. I brought some copies here with my contact information if it can ever be of help. I'm certainly not, I couldn't stand before you or sit before you today and tell you what you should do. I could probably tell you more from our own mistakes as to what not to do than tell you what to do.
So I remember 9 years ago, the mayor said, "Hey, Clayton, I need you back in Louisville because we're celebrating that debris has been picked up." I'm like, that's the craziest thing in the world. But then he explained to me, like, I want the people to know we've made progress. And that gives them hope. It really does. It gives them hope. So as he said there, find those, when you get in this position, find those little elements to create hope. Create hope. 9 years ago. All right, so what advice do you have for this group right here? Who has never been in a disaster? Raise your hands. Okay. Who has? I expect it to be the other way around. Okay. Now, what advice do you have? A lot of them have been through it.
I just reiterate that about patience. Understand the process. As a mayor, it's kind of a joking thing when I first came into office and coming to MML, learning so much, and someone said something about, being a mayor, all you deal with is dogs, ditches, and debris. Once again, my alliteration's coming to fruition, but dogs, ditches, and debris. Well, I had a whole new revelation of what debris means after this disaster, and it was significant, debris removal. But there's another D, dogs, ditches, debris, and documentation. I heard that so much I was sick of it, but that's how we finally got to the finish line, and we've achieved some great things, and our community is much better for what we did as a community, the county, our local health care, the city. Our city alone, we're a small city, we've achieved roughly $65 million of capital projects in the last 9 years. So you can imagine there's a lot of documentation. And they've made some great strides. I say they, MEMA, with the way it's even processed and with new technology and things like that. So lean heavily on the experts, listen to them, try your best to understand the process, and just know it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
So let me talk just a little about debris. I've got kind of a commercial. The legislature this last year has approved the state to advertise for statewide debris contracts. You can still pick it up yourself. You can still do your own contracts. Or you can just sign on to one of these pre-approved contracts and get those debris pickers up there going. So those are going out to bid very soon. So hopefully that'll be another tool in your arsenal that you can sign on and get debris going as well. And Mayor Glenn, if you expect me to be around in 9 years, then you better predict her than my cardiologist probably so as well. So at this point here, we'll take a few questions, and so you'll have to stand. You'll have to speak very loud as well.
You mentioned that the state's going to be going out for debris removal contract bids. Are you going to be going out for monitoring bids also?
Debris and monitoring, yes. But these questions are for these guys up here. Don't be tricking me now. Yes, ma'am. Please stand. So I think the question is, you know, immediately after a storm, all the experts, air quotes there, show up to get your business as well. Any advice to those carpetbaggers, as I call them?
I would say that it goes back to being patient. It's natural to want to knee-jerk reaction to everything and try to fix the problem immediately, and I fell victim to that. The most important thing, obviously, in the immediate aftermath is search and rescue. It's about people's lives. It's not about property at that point. And focus on that, if given that this happens to you soon. Just remember that. That's the primary focus, and we were in that mode for 72 plus hours until the final victims were found. I got cussed, yelled at because we were still looking for a child. And I shut down the streets, and you have to make decisions. I've never made a quick decision like this, but we shut down the streets to neighborhoods where people wanted to go through and look at their belongings and pilfer through. We wouldn't let them go because we didn't know if they were going to be disturbing debris and come across this child while we were doing search and rescue. So to answer your question with the other part is, that'll work itself out. I did feel a lot of pressure from those that were here wanting to talk to me about debris removal and monitoring and consulting and grant writing. And it didn't take long. I figured it out myself. I was like, oh wait, they're fixing to make a lot of money. And that leaned upon those that have been there. They're there for a reason. And I joked about the blue shirts, but lean on those blue shirts.
All right, anybody else? We can take one more question.
Yeah, so I've spoken to many of you guys, and first of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't come out here and say thank you so much for all of you guys that have stepped in to different municipalities. We had we had 14 different municipalities step in as it relates to the electricity side and helping us on the infrastructure. So I've spoken to most of you guys and really wanted to say thank you again. I want to say thank you out loud. But the bigger thing that I want to tell, and I think these guys can echo this as well, the human spirit, right, is so strong, and we're so resilient as a people. And people coming together is going to blow your mind when just the human spirit, the love, the care that a lot of you in this room, in our communities. 4 or 5 days after the storm, we had a service, a religious service in our park. And the outreach there was extremely humbling. But I want to tell all of us, I want to remind each of us, it's a hell of a note that it takes something catastrophic to pull us all together like that. I want to tell you guys that. But what's going to happen when you do experience the storm, and you have experienced it, some of you guys, it's humbling. I get emotional talking about it, and I appreciate it. I appreciate each one of you guys that's reached out to me and helped this community. But I love you, and I appreciate everything. I really do. It means a lot to me.
All right, so I want to offer a special thanks to our mayor panel for sharing their experiences. They are available. All right? So as we close out this session, that doesn't mean your opportunity to contact them for advice is done. No, they are available as well. MEMA's available. I'm in booth 933. I've got some flyers up here that you can come and get some. I'm also taking the booth 933 as well. But my question, as I started with, how prepared are you? We can't stop the storm. We can do all the textbooky things, but how flexible and prepared are you to lead when it happens? Because it's going to happen. Thank you very much.